I still remember the exact shade of mahogany on that conference table where my career imploded. 5 years at Westlake Technologies, gone in 5 minutes. My boss Tom's face, flushed with manufactured rage as he pointed at the quarterly reports. This is completely unacceptable, David. These numbers are catastrophic. Everyone's eyes burned into me. What they didn't know was that Tom had deliberately sabotaged my presentation with incorrect data only he had access to. I packed my things in a cardboard box while whispers followed me to the elevator. But 3 months later, I'd be sitting in the CEO's office, watching Tom clean out his desk through the glass walls. Because sometimes life gives you a second chance in the most unexpected ways. And mine came in the form of an old man in a rumpled suit who'd been sitting silently in the corner during my public execution. I didn't recognize him then. How could I have known he was Gerald Westlake himself, the founder of the company, who'd retired years ago but still kept a watchful eye on his legacy? This is the story of how I was humiliated, fired, and then offered the position of the man who destroyed me. This is how I learned that integrity outlasts ambition every single time. I grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts, in a blue-collar neighborhood where my father worked double shifts at the local paper mill. Dad was old school, believed in hard work, respect, and above all else, loyalty. Your word is all you have in this world, David, he'd say. Break it once, and no one will trust you again. Mom was the peacemaker, always smoothing things over when Dad's temper flared after 14-hour workdays. My younger sister Jenna was the family golden child. Perfect grades, perfect attitude, perfect future. I was the problem child, not because I caused trouble, but because I questioned everything. In our household, questioning was equivalent to disobedience. I remember my high school graduation dinner at Ronnie's Clam Shack, our family's special occasion spot. Dad had invited our extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins from all over New England. He stood up, raised his glass, and began what I thought would be a toast to my accomplishment. Today, we're celebrating David finally finishing something he started. Nervous laughter rippled around the table. Let's hope college goes better than those piano lessons, baseball, debate club. He listed every activity I'd ever abandoned, each one landing like a slap. By the end, my face burned while relatives avoided eye contact. That night, I promised myself I'd prove him wrong. In college at UMass, I discovered my aptitude for business analytics. Numbers made sense to me, they didn't judge or ridicule. I graduated summa cum laude, but Dad just nodded and said, "Now the real work begins." When I landed the job at Westlake Technologies in Boston, I thought I'd finally earned his respect. He came to help me move into my apartment near Fenway. As we unpacked, he picked up my diploma and studied it. For a moment, I thought he might say he was proud. Instead, he said, "Your grandfather worked 40 years at the same company. Loyalty matters, David. Don't forget that." The irony wasn't lost on me when 5 years into my career at Westlake, my unwavering loyalty to the company became the weapon used against me. I'd never missed a deadline, never called in sick, worked weekends without complaint. I believed in what we were building. My team respected me. My quarterly reports consistently exceeded expectations. That's why when Tom Schmidt was brought in as our new division head, I was confused when he immediately seemed to have it out for me. He'd been transferred from the Chicago office with a reputation as a fixer, someone who could turn underperforming departments around. But our department wasn't underperforming. Still, Tom began micromanaging me, questioning my methodologies, and taking credit for my team's successes. What I didn't know was that Tom needed a scapegoat to justify the sweeping changes he wanted to implement, changes that would eventually outsource half our department. I was the most senior manager, so I became his target. The weekend before my termination, I'd been putting final touches on a major presentation about our Q3 performance. Dad and Mom were visiting from Worcester, and we'd planned a Sunday dinner at my place. Dad was particularly interested in hearing about my career progress. For once, I had something substantial to share. I was being considered for promotion to director. Tom actually asked me to prepare the quarterly presentation for the executive team. I told them, setting down a tray of Mom's famous New England pot roast. That's a big deal. Usually, he handles those himself. Dad nodded, the closest thing to approval I'd ever get. Don't mess it up. I wonder what he'd think now, watching me load my personal items into a cardboard box while security waited to escort me out of the building. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching this video from. I'm curious how far this story travels. The day of the quarterly review began like any other October morning in Boston. The maple trees lining Commonwealth Avenue had turned brilliant shades of red and orange, and there was that distinct fall chill in the air that required a heavier jacket than I'd brought. Westlake's headquarters occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming tower in the financial district, with views of Boston Harbor that tourists paid good money to see. I arrived early, 6:15 a.m., to review my presentation one last time. Tom had insisted on providing the financial data himself, sending the final spreadsheets to me just the night before. These numbers come directly from finance, he'd said. Make sure they're prominently featured in the slides. I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. integrating them into my presentation. The executive boardroom was on the 38th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows and that intimidating mahogany table that could seat 20. I set up my laptop, checked the projector connection, and rehearsed my opening remarks. By 7:30, I was feeling confident. This presentation could secure my promotion. Tom arrived at 7:45, impeccable in his tailored suit, not a hair out of place. Ready for your big moment, David? He asked, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Absolutely, I replied. The slides integrate all the data you sent over. Something flashed across his face. Satisfaction? Relief? Perfect. Just remember, this isn't just a presentation, it's a statement about your capabilities. By 8 a.m., executives began filing in CFO, CTO, various VPs, and several board members. I recognized most of them from company events, though there was one elderly gentleman in the corner I didn't know. He wore a slightly outdated suit and seemed to be observing rather than participating. At 8:15 sharp, our CEO Patricia Whitman entered, and everyone stood. Good morning, team. Let's dive right in. I understand Tom and David have prepared an analysis of Q3 performance. Tom stood. Yes, Patricia. David has been leading this initiative, so I'll turn it over to him. The way he emphasized leading made my stomach tighten. I began my presentation confidently, clicking through the introductory slides that outlined our department's objectives. Everything was going smoothly until I reached the financial data section. As you can see, I said, gesturing to the screen, our Q3 results show a significant decrease in operating expenses while maintaining productivity levels. Patricia leaned forward, frowning. David, these numbers don't match what finance reported yesterday. I blinked, confused. I'm sorry. According to this, she continued, pointing at my slide, we've reduced expenses by 18% year over year. But finance reported only a 3% reduction. My heart started racing. These are the figures I received from. Furthermore, the CFO interrupted, these profit margins are wildly inflated. Where did you get this data? Before I could respond, Tom cleared his throat. Patricia, if I may? He opened his laptop. I have the correct figures here. I'm not sure why David's presentation contains these discrepancies. As Tom displayed the correct data I'd never seen before, I felt the room spinning. The actual numbers showed our department underperforming in several key metrics. David, Patricia said, her voice sharp, did you verify these figures before presenting them? My mouth was dry. Tom provided the data last night. He said they came directly from finance. Tom's expression hardened. That's absolutely false. I sent you the preliminary data and explicitly told you to confirm the final numbers with finance this morning. It was a blatant lie, but it was his word against mine. And he was division head. I have the email. I started reaching for my phone. Enough, Patricia said. This is completely unacceptable. These meetings are crucial for our strategic planning. Presenting false information wastes everyone's time and could lead to catastrophic business decisions. I didn't, David, Tom interrupted, his voice dripping with disappointment. I vouched for you. I gave you this opportunity to prove yourself, and instead, you've embarrassed the entire department. The room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes stared at me. Some pitying, some angry, most just uncomfortable. I think, Patricia said finally, we should continue this discussion privately after the meeting. Tom, do you have the correct data prepared? Of course, he replied smoothly, taking control of the presentation. For the next 40 minutes, I sat there, humiliated, as Tom presented my work with the correct numbers, highlighting the challenges his team was facing and his strategic plan to address them. A plan that, I would later learn, included eliminating my position and redistributing my responsibilities among junior analysts who cost less. Throughout Tom's presentation, I noticed the elderly man in the corner watching intently, his eyes moving between Tom and me. Occasionally, he would write something in a small notebook. I assumed he was a board member I hadn't met before. When the meeting finally ended, Patricia asked Tom and me to stay behind. The room emptied, though the old man lingered, pretending to organize his notes. David, Patricia began, falsifying data for an executive presentation is grounds for immediate termination. I didn't falsify anything, I insisted. The data came from Tom. Tom shook his head sadly. David, taking responsibility for mistakes is part of leadership. Trying to shift blame only makes this worse. Patricia sighed. Tom, please ask HR to process the necessary paperwork. David, security will escort you to clean out your desk. As I stood there, stunned, the elderly man finally spoke. Patricia, if you don't mind, I'd like to observe this situation a bit further. Patricia looked surprised. Of course, Mr. Westlake. Westlake, the founder, the man whose name was on the building, and he'd witnessed my entire humiliation. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that subscribe button and like the video. Help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything. Security waited outside the boardroom as I emptied my desk into a cardboard box. My team watched in confused silence. 6 years of work reduced to a few personal items. A Boston Red Sox paperweight my sister gave me, family photos, a half-empty bottle of aspirin. My computer access had already been revoked. My keycard deactivated. Tom supervised the process, maintaining a grave expression for anyone watching, but I caught the satisfied smirk when no one was looking. I'll need any company documents you may have at home, he said loudly enough for others to hear. There aren't any, I replied, struggling to maintain composure. My father's voice echoed in my head, never let them see you sweat. As I placed the last item in my box, a coffee mug from my first company Christmas party, I noticed Gerald Westlake standing near the elevator, observing. Our eyes met briefly before I looked away. Security gestured toward the elevator. This was it. The walk of shame every corporate employee dreads. But as I reached the elevator, something snapped inside me. My father had taught me about loyalty, but he'd also taught me about standing up for the truth. If I walked out now, Tom's lie would become reality. I'd be another casualty in his corporate climb, forgotten by next week. I set my box down and turned around. Attention, everyone, I called out, my voice stronger than I expected. The open plan office fell silent. Tom's head snapped up, eyes widening. I want to clarify something before I leave. David, Tom warned, security is waiting. I've been terminated for allegedly falsifying financial data in this morning's presentation, I continued. But I want you all to know that I used the exact figures provided to me by Tom Schmidt last night via email. Murmurs spread across the floor. Tom strode toward me. This is inappropriate and unprofessional, he hissed. What's unprofessional is sabotaging a colleague to cover up departmental underperformance, I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. What's inappropriate is planning to outsource half this team while pretending to champion their work. Gasps and whispers erupted around us. Tom's face flushed crimson. That's enough. Security, escort him out now. As security approached, I pulled out my phone. I have the emails, Tom. The timestamps, the original data you sent. I was so focused on creating a perfect presentation that I didn't question why you'd want me to handle this suddenly, or why you insisted on providing the data yourself. Those emails prove nothing, Tom sputtered, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Perhaps, came an aged voice from behind me, we should examine this evidence before proceeding. Gerald Westlake stepped forward, his presence immediately commanding attention despite his unassuming appearance. Mr. Westlake, Tom said, quickly composing himself. This is an internal matter This is my company, young man, Westlake interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. Everything that happens here is my concern. He turned to me. David, is it? I'd like to see these emails. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled up the evidence. Tom's original email with the attachment timestamp, the data file itself. As Mr. Westlake reviewed them, the floor remained silent. Even security seemed unsure what to do. Patricia, Mr. Westlake called out, and only then did I notice our CO standing near her office, watching the scene unfold. I believe we've made a grave error in judgment today. I'd like to see both these gentlemen in the conference room immediately, along with someone from IT who can verify email authenticity. As we filed back toward the conference room, I caught glimpses of my colleagues, faces, shock, confusion, and from my team, something that looked like hope. The atmosphere had shifted from my humiliation to Tom's exposure. In the conference room, IT confirmed what I already knew. The timestamps and data were exactly as I'd claimed. Tom had deliberately provided false information, setting me up to take the fall for the department's actual underperformance. I was trying to protect the team, Tom argued weakly. If executives saw the real numbers, they'd demand immediate cuts. I needed time to implement my strategy. By sacrificing David? Patricia asked, her earlier certainty now replaced with cold anger. He was resistant to my vision for the department, Tom replied. Always questioning my decisions, undermining my authority with the team. You mean he questioned your plan to outsource half the staff? Mr. Westlake asked mildly. Tom's head snapped up. How did you? I make it my business to know what's happening in my company, even in retirement, the old man replied. I've been sitting in on meetings across departments for weeks. Observing. Patricia turned to Tom. You never presented any outsourcing plan to me. It was preliminary, Tom muttered. Just exploring options. Mr. Westlake shook his head. Young man, this company was built on two principles, innovation and integrity. You've demonstrated neither today. He turned to Patricia. I believe we have sufficient cause for termination here, but that decision rests with you now. Patricia didn't hesitate. Tom, you're terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your things. Tom's face drained of color. You can't, this isn't. He looked around the room desperately, finding no allies. This is a mistake. The department needs my leadership. What this department needs, Mr. Westlake said, is exactly what it's been missing. Honesty. As Tom was let out, he brushed past me, whispering, this isn't over. But it was. For him at least. The aftermath was both immediate and far-reaching. Tom was escorted out the same way he'd arranged for me, though with considerably less dignity. While I was permitted to stay, Patricia asked me to take the rest of the week off while they conducted a thorough investigation. Paid leave, she emphasized. Not termination. I spent those 3 days in a state of anxious limbo, alternating between relief at having defended myself and fear that it wouldn't matter in the end. Corporate America has a way of protecting itself, and whistleblowers, even vindicated ones, often find themselves quietly pushed out later. My father called the night after everything happened. News travels fast in families. Heard you had some trouble at work, he said, his gruff voice betraying concern despite his attempt at casualness. I told him everything, Tom's sabotage, my public stand, Gerald Westlake's intervention. There was a long pause when I finished. You stood your ground, he finally said. I did. Good. Another pause. Your grandfather would have done the same. Coming from my father, this was the equivalent of a standing ovation. On Monday morning, I returned to Westlake Technologies uncertain of what awaited me. The receptionist smiled warmly, a good sign. My keycard worked, An even better one. When I reached my floor, my team greeted me with a round of applause. Conference room, 10 minutes, my assistant whispered. Patricia and Mr. Westlake want to see you. Those were possibly the longest 10 minutes of my life. I straightened my tie at least 4 times before heading in. Patricia and Gerald Westlake were already seated when I arrived. Between them sat a folder with my name on it. David, Patricia began, first, let me personally apologize for what happened. We failed you as an organization. Thank you, I said, unsure where this was heading. Mr. Westlake spoke next. Young man, in my 60 years of business, I've learned that character reveals itself most clearly in crisis. Some people fold, some people flee, and some people fight. He smiled slightly. You fought, but, and this is important, you fought with facts, not accusations. You defended yourself without trying to destroy others. Patricia nodded. We've spent the last 3 days reviewing Tom's communications and department records. What we found was troubling. She slid the folder toward me. Inside were printouts of emails between Tom and executives at a rival firm discussing potential employment. There were also detailed plans for outsourcing our department's functions, not to save the company money, as he'd claimed, but to deliberately weaken it before his departure. Corporate espionage? And sabotage, Patricia confirmed. He was setting up our department to fail after he left, which is why he needed to discredit anyone who might succeed him, especially you. Mr. Westlake leaned forward. The question now is, what do we do about the department? I looked between them, suddenly understanding why I was here. You want my assessment? We want more than that, Patricia said. We want you to take over as division head. The offer was so unexpected I almost laughed. Me? I'm not even director level yet. Titles, Mr. Westlake waved dismissively. I started this company in my garage in Somerville. No title at all. Patricia smiled. We need someone who knows the department inside out, who has the team's trust, and who has demonstrated both competence and character. The board has already approved the appointment. My mind raced. Division head meant overseeing 3 departments, a budget increase of millions, and a seat at the executive table. It was more responsibility than I'd ever imagined having at 32. I'd need to make some changes, I said cautiously. We're counting on it, Mr. Westlake replied. The next few months were a whirlwind. I restructured the department, promoting talented team members who'd been overlooked, including Maria Chin, who became my right hand. We implemented new transparency protocols for all financial reporting. And rather than outsourcing, we invested in training our existing staff on emerging technologies. 6 months after my near termination, our department posted the strongest quarterly results in the company's history. The most surprising development, however, came from an unexpected direction. Gerald Westlake began mentoring me. What started as weekly check-ins evolved into lunches where he shared stories from the company's early days and lessons from his 6 decades in business. Why did you stay that day? I asked him during one of these lunches. In the boardroom, when everyone else left. Why did you stay to watch? He set down his fork, considering. There was something in your eyes when Patricia accused you, not fear or anger, but disappointment. Like you'd expected better from a company you believed in. He smiled. I recognized that look. I've felt it myself many times. 1 year after the incident, I received a call from Patricia's office requesting an urgent meeting. When I arrived, Gerald Westlake was there as well, along with several board members. David, Patricia began, Gerald has made a decision that affects all of us. Mr. Westlake, now 84, smiled. I'm fully retiring this time. No more lurking in boardrooms. He looked directly at me. But before I go, I wanted to establish a new position at Westlake Technologies. Chief Integrity Officer. The board members nodded approval. This person, he continued, would ensure we never lose sight of the principles this company was built on. They would have authority to review any department, question any decision, and report directly to the board. He slid a folder across the table, identical to the one from a year ago, but with a different title on it. "We'd like you to be the first," Patricia said. The unexpected twist was that I'd be leaving my hard-won division head role, the position I'd been framed to prevent me from getting, to pioneer something entirely new. A role with no precedent and no roadmap, but with the potential to shape the company's culture for generations. "You don't have to decide immediately, mister," Westlake said. "But I already had. I accept." 3 years have passed since then. Westlake Technologies has grown to become one of the most respected firms in our industry, known not just for innovation but for ethical business practices. Tom Schmidt, I heard, bounced between several companies before facing federal charges for corporate espionage. As for my father, he finally came to visit the Boston office last Christmas. As we stood looking out at the harbor from my new corner office, he put his hand on my shoulder, a rare gesture of physical affection. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said simply. "Just him?" I asked, half joking. Dad cleared his throat. "He would be proudest," he amended. "But not the only one." It wasn't a Hallmark movie moment. We didn't hug or tear up. But standing there, looking out at the city lights reflecting on the water, it felt like the completion of a circle that had started with that humiliating speech at Ronnie's Clam Shack all those years ago. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if Gerald Westlake hadn't been in that boardroom that day. If I had just walked out with my cardboard box, swallowed the injustice, and moved on. The easiest path is rarely the right one, but it's often tempting, especially when standing up means standing alone. What I've learned is that integrity isn't just a personal virtue, it's a professional asset. In a world where cutting corners and climbing over others is normalized, being the person who refuses to play that game makes you rare. And rare has value. I still have that cardboard box in my closet at home. Empty now, but I keep it as a reminder of how quickly everything can change, both for worse and for better. Sometimes I tell new hires about it during orientation. At Westlake Technologies, I say, we don't put people in boxes. We help them think outside of them. The company has grown substantially since my confrontation with Tom. We've opened offices in Austin and Seattle, acquired 2 smaller firms, and launched an innovation lab in Cambridge. But what I'm most proud of isn't measured in revenue or market share. It's the culture we've built, one where speaking truth to power isn't career suicide but career advancement. Gerald Westlake still drops by occasionally, though he spends most of his time at his Cape Cod home these days. "Just checking on my legacy," he always says with a wink. But I think he knows his legacy is secure. Not just in the company that bears his name, but in every decision we make that honors what he built. As for my father, he finally retired from the paper mill last year. At his retirement party, at Ronnie's Clam Shack, of course, I was asked to give a speech. Standing at that same spot where he had once listed my failures, I instead spoke about what he'd taught me, that your word is all you have in this world, that loyalty matters, but that it should never come at the expense of truth. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: your integrity is non-negotiable. Jobs will come and go. Titles will change. Companies will rise and fall. But who you are, what you stand for, that remains. In your darkest professional moment, when it feels like everything is crumbling, remember that how you respond in that moment defines you more than the moment itself. I'm not saying it's easy. Standing up when everyone expects you to kneel rarely is. But I can promise you this: on the other side of that courage is a version of your life you couldn't have imagined, one where you don't just survive, but thrive on your own terms. So thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you in any way, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories of professional resilience and growth. Share your own experiences in the comments. I read every single one. And remember, sometimes the worst day of your career can become the first day of your best one. You just have to be willing to stand your ground.